Like you said, the general public doesn't know what police go through on a daily basis.
Yeah, my favorite thing is like, I know my rights.
This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
35, they cut it off, and I had one.
Well, that's for pension purposes.
Yeah, and I had one test left, and I took everything, and I'll never forget one of my first interviews in my hometown. It's a chief's test. You're sitting at a table like this, and I'd already taken the physical aspect of it and passed the written, and I'm sitting at a table like this, and there's a captain. No, there's two retired chiefs, and the captain's sitting there watching you go back and forth. The questions are over in like 10 minutes, and it's just basic. It's like, oh, you're currently working here, I'm kind of moving around here. But at the time, after college, I got a job through a family friend. I did it for 7 years. I worked in publishing. I was a developmental editor, did a little bit of that, work in the city. So anyway, going back to this interview.
But he hated his literature class.
Right.
Yeah, right.
That's theoretically, yeah.
It's like I hate manually masturbating animals, so I wasn't going to be a veterinarian, even though I applied for a couple.
Anyway,
Sorry.
It's all right.
Let's get back on track here.
Yeah, so I'm sitting there in the interview, and the question came about, you ever use marijuana? And this is an honest answer. I did when I was in high school, didn't like it, and I always knew eventually wanted a career in law enforcement, and I don't do it anymore. And the whole time, this captain, he's probably the chief now, just sitting there, tapping his pen, just staring at me, like basically like, get out.
Well, did you get asked that question when you were interviewed? Did you ever use marijuana?
I don't even think so.
Were you?
Honestly,
I don't think they asked if specifically marijuana. Did you ever use any illegal drugs?
You're talking about the
No,
really?
just the interview process. Because they asked me that, and my answer was like this. I was a kid once.
In my psych exam, they asked, I remember they make you fill out all these like hundreds of multiple choice questions and stuff. And one that popped on my test was that, yes, I can sit and drink a 6-pack of beer. So the psychologist asked me, hey, what's up with that? All right, if I'm at an all-day barbecue, it's the 4th of July, I'm not driving anywhere, yeah, I can have a 6-pack, once in a blue moon. I'm not an alcoholic. I've never had any vices as far as drugs or alcohol. I mean, sure, I'll have an occasional glass of wine, beer, or anything like that, but...
I always like you're talking about the MMPI. I always like the question is like, would you rather read a book or look at porn?
Yeah, those questions. Yeah. That's all. Like the ones, hey, do you feel like ripping your hair out? Yeah, I want to. This is fucking 375 questions. I feel like ripping the guy next to me his hair out too.
Oh, by the way, I've taken 5 of them.
Yeah.
All right, because my department, you want to talk about an oppressive abuse of power? My boss used to send people for psychological evaluations as a punishment if he didn't like you. So I took 5 of them. Our favorite doctor, the one they sent us to after our shootings, tried to give me number 6, and I said, "Oh God!" And he's like, "What's the matter?" And I said, "This is the 6th time I've taken this damn test."
I had to take it.
And he says, "Well, you can't take it. I invalidated the test because you can only take it so many times in a certain amount of years."
Wow.
So that's how many times I took it. Like I knew the answers. I knew what I was going to. I said, "Listen, you can test me again. It's going to be the same answers. I like watching porn."
So, who does?
I don't know. This is the questions.
Anyway, it was a long process of taking exams. It was probably about 10 years. And
did you ever get discouraged?
Sure. I mean, but it's a long process. I mean, I felt like I was wasting my time. In the state of New Jersey, you need residency. And, after I graduated, I moved to Hoboken. I moved to Hoboken in, I want to say 07 or 06. It was right around the time the department was facing layoffs and cuts.
Like rice bill stuff?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, this is it. Like, I got 0 shot at this. I'm working in the city. I also took a Port Authority exam, written exam, which I was notified I passed. Still didn't hear nothing. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess the ship has sailed. I did the corporate grind in publishing, typical office space type job. Great job. But it was a dead end job. It was developing, editing newsletters, books, and journals. And I started thinking about, what am I going to do next? And NYU had a program where it's like a continuing education. It's not like it's accredited, but you earn a certificate. And I got it in paralegal studies. And I'm thinking, you know what? This job's going nowhere. Police ain't going to work out. It's something that I could fall back on.
You started developing a plan B.
Yeah, precisely. And currently that's where I'm at now, and everything's great. So I eventually get laid off, and I get a great severance. I was a good employee. I'm like, at this time, I already met my wife. We've been happily married 10 years, and she didn't marry a cop. She married somebody that always, she saw someone that accomplished a dream and a goal and became a police officer.
Do you mind if I ask you if you're still married?
Absolutely. Yeah, 10 years.
You're still married, which you've beat the statistic.
Yeah.
So the statistic is, statistically, if you were married before you were a cop, your chances of divorce skyrocket. If you're married after you're a cop, because they know what they're getting. That's because this job changes you. I don't care what anybody says. This job changes you.
Listen,
Every part of you.
It changes you, but you progress. You deal with it. You roll with it. I had a few friends who knew me and were like, "Listen, don't ever change when you take this job," and I didn't. And not to say that I was a good or a bad police officer. I remain the same person. Yes, this job changes you. You get a front row seat to the greatest show on earth.
But it's a strong woman.
Absolutely.
Who can stick that out, because whether you saw it or not, they got to sort of roll with the punches. Whether you saw it or not.
Absolutely. I mean, I was fortunate enough where the timing was, so going back to my job, I get laid off. That first week of waiting over 10 years of trying to become a police officer, I get the certification from Hoboken, and it's like 12. And I was like, wow, I got a shot here. That same week, I get a letter from Port Authority. Port Authority going back to the FBI, they have very high standards. So going through their background check, it was funny. I had been living in Hoboken for years already. They wanted proof of every traffic summons and every parking ticket you ever gotten paid. It's been, paid off, and a certified copy of it. Everything's got to be certified. I made friends with the guy at the UPS store because I was always there getting shit certified. And I'll never forget going to Hoboken and be like, "Hi, I'm Matt Isler, and can you do me a favor? Can you print out a copy of every parking ticket I ever got in this town?" And we lived on Washington Street. So, I mean, I was constantly getting towed. The best one, Mike, you ready for the best one was, because I lived right next to the great establishment, the far side, between 5th and 6th on Washington.
I know where that is.
And I used to park. We used to go out at night. We had one car. I would park it. It's Sunday. I don't got to worry about parking. I woke up one morning, and I was like, the fuck are all these people doing out here? It was the Arts and Music Festival, and my fucking car was just like gone. And thankfully back then, I walked uptown, and I was able to get my car back, and eventually sold it and bought my wife a ring, And so, like I said, I felt bad for all the people in the academy who had to get married, have children, to deal with such important milestones in your life and have to, the shave head, sir, yes, sir. And, there was guys, we were joking with one of the guys in the academy. He's like, he was going to wear a toupee. Nothing against because of the shaved head. So I'm jumping around, but.
So you go into the academy for Hoboken. Like, you finally got it.
Who did you get hired with? I don't remember.
Big class. We were originally a class of 10. I'm not going to mention any names, but we were all great guys.
I remember.
We got. I remember. See, now here comes another interesting thing. I started my career at almost a tipping point in law enforcement in 2013. I started the academy in July of 13, and within a year,
trying to think of what happened.
Within a year that I was on, Detective Melvin Santiago of the Jersey City Police Department was murdered.
Ambushed.
Yes. He and that's when he started the academy at a similar time I did. And that's when things really started to change. I was a cop for nearly 9 years, and that was going to that and seeing something like that as a young officer on the job, it just kind of like,
I had to look his mother in the eye. I'll tell you why, because my old neighbor, was his relative. They're all Jersey City people. I had to look her in the eye. She came to the house one day, and I knew who she was. And that was tough.
Yeah, rest in peace, Melvin. And my 10 years between that, the opiates, the pandemic, just it was a great time, and it was a fun chapter. And I can sit here and you mentioned abuse of power before. I can blame all the outside figures that happened to me as far as my resignation as a police officer. But at the end of the day, it's myself, and I take responsibility for it.
That's the most important thing. You got to take responsibility for your actions.
And not everyone can do that.
Before we get there,
unfortunately.
you get this job as a police officer, hit the streets. You wanted to be a police officer for 10 years. You've been taking test after test after test. When you got on, was it what you expected?
No. I mean, it's to a degree, yes. But
see, I'm like you. I was totally ignorant to the job. I have a family member. My great-great-grandfather was a lieutenant in the Philadelphia Police Department. I never met him. I have no idea.
You go in there and you think it's all fast-paced, and
it's really not.
And what's funny, too, is that the public's opinion of what police work is completely off, too.
Correct.
Without doubt.
I remember asking this question to a lieutenant going, if I stop a car and I get a PBA card, what do I do? I was ignorant on that, I swear. And he goes, if it wasn't too bad, you sort of give him a little courtesy. And I had to be schooled on every aspect of it, so I was really coming in fresh.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's where you were, too.
Yeah, I was, and my cousin, who I mentioned earlier, he's obviously in D.C., and, we text every once in a while, and I'll never forget when, the big thing with Colin Kaepernick, and, a lot of times we get held to work, and I remember I worked the 4 to 12 shift. All right, take a walk and patrol the bar scene. And, I remember texting him like, hey, what do you think of all this? And he goes, this is what makes this country great. That you can have that opinion, and so be it. I mean, everyone's welcome to it. And, unfortunately, and that's the beauty of it. As much as you disagree with anyone's opinion, you're free to, I'm free to have this conversation right now.
I'm free to express your opinions.
I've said that as well. You go to Russia and you speak out against the KGB. Well, you're going to have a problem, or the secret police, whatever the hell they're called now. You're going to have a problem. But in America, that's one of the rights that you're afforded. You can have your opinion. As long as your opinions don't infringe on my personal freedoms, go ahead, have at it. And
I'm always one where, I prided myself in not having a civilian complain about me. And unfortunately, that did occur, and I suffered some serious consequences for that.
So, but you had some good calls in there, right? You
absolutely
had some good stuff.
I won a couple awards. Going back to the opiate crisis, I've seen 2 people die and come back to life. That's
Narcan?
Yes.
See, I missed Narcan.
I never had it.
I never had it. I knew it was out there, but it was out there for medic use. It wasn't even EMTs had it. Now they all have it in their car. And I was talking to somebody recently because I was interested about the Narcan, and they said, you hit somebody with Narcan, you better be able to hold them down because they're going to be pissed.
Mike,
you just took away their high.
Yep.
Mike, you were around. we were averaging, I would say, at least one every 2 to 3 days. It was bad.
It was continuous.
Yeah.
And
it's a nasal spray, right?
Yeah.
Well, just the overdoses in general. I'm not talking about saves. I'm just talking about just overdose calls.
A lot.
Hoboken is I want to preface this too. Hoboken is a great town because of its police department. I feel that the town doesn't feel, has this sense of wow, we can always do better type of things. But for what they are and what they do, I'm very proud to say, I was a member of that department.
Have you ever met Nicky Burke?
He was my supervisor.
So
it was tough because he honestly he had it. He was on midnights for that's what I remember. A majority of his career. That's a tough shift.
I'll get back into
the bar
that.
scene.
Yeah. So Hoboken's an interesting animal because you have the bar scene, and I'll never forget my first day on the job. Right, 4 to 12. Here you go, kid. And that police officer took me down to the projects, and
In a mile square, you don't think, especially in modern
Now
day
for
Hoboken.
me, I lived on Washington Street. I took the bus to the city. I took the path in. The furthest west in town, Mike, was Fiore's to get a sandwich
Yeah.
on Adams.
Big,
And-
right by Biggie's?
You were close. You were
Yeah,
close down
one
there
block,
behind
yeah.
Big.
Right behind Biggie's.
Yeah.
Mike,
Go down to
make,
Biggie's, make a right.
make a left, go behind Biggie's.
It's close. It is
Mike, I
close.
see no Biggies. Oh yeah, they tore it down about 4 years ago. Mike. I thought you'd know where it was.
You got to
But
go to the
I-
other
I
biggies
will-
on 17.
I will tell you this: the people in Hoboken, through Mike DePalma, that we have met, have been the most genuine, have been the most caring, and they bring you in. We went down to, and this just speaks to the people of Hoboken. We went down to that backyard barbecue
Yeah.
where Cooney was, and Stewie was there, and one guy looked like he was a melted candle, and I mean, it was it was really screwed
Matt
up stuff.
probably knows half of them.
Yeah.
But
uh,
I got to be honest with you, they brought us in, and we were their family.
We're like
it
one
was-
of their own.
It was like we've known them for years.
my grandfather on my mother's side, he worked 20 some odd years at Maxwell House. He got out of Hoboken. My mother didn't grow up in town, but I do have roots there, and it's fun. I'll never forget someone in the locker room was like, "Yeah, you got roots here, back in freaking when the horse and buggy and like freaking prohibition days."
Yeah, so some of those guys.
I mean,
go
listen,
that way.
it was. I'll say it again. It was really a remarkable time to be a police officer. As far as I mean, I didn't even make it a decade, and just seeing what the department deals with on a daily basis, and just society.
Like I said, the general public doesn't know what police go through on a daily basis.
Yeah, my favorite thing is like, I know my rights.
Yeah.
We've all heard it as police officers, and it's just like, yep, it's my duty to protect and serve you. It's just.
It wasn't always sunshine and rainbows for you. At some point in your career, stuff started sliding.
Yeah, I mean, it got off to a rough start. I mean, I won't get into the specifics of that, but I was part of a unit that patrolled the housing project, and as a result, it got disbanded. I'm talking 9. Hey, they popped up. But
It looks like young Mike. He's only got 2 chins in that picture.
Yeah, that's a beautiful
I know
picture, dude.
and I know I
Stop with
signed
the
something.
chin
I
thing.
don't want what's going. Anyway,
It's a gorgeous picture.
anyway.
God, I'd date you. I'm not gay, but I'd date
Listen, can you... Come on. Let's go.
you. I love that picture. It's my favorite picture of you.
You want to put the Mickey Mouse next to it, Mike? Just
Not to,
No, I like the picture with the suit on.
yeah, that was a good picture. Not to deter from
Sure.
what you said, but I just look at that picture, I fall in love.
lose my train of thought.
I do. It totally lose my train of thought. So you stuff starts sliding. Like, what year did you notice things start to change for you in police work?
I always had a chip on my shoulder because I got jammed up right off the jump. Like, within my first 10 days of the job, not 10 days, like 30 days, I was assigned to a unit that was disbanded. Supervisors got 30. The unit that was in it before me got a 20-day suspension. And after it was all said and done, I got a 10-day suspension as part of this group that was accused of, overblown things. I mean, it was very politically involved. I'll say that.
Was there any shred of truth in it?
Very little. I was brand new. Phantom.
You were guilty by association.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
pretty much so.
long story short, they shut down that unit and go to midnights and take a walk by yourself. And I did that for a few months and just kind of sit and ponder about what's going on. They're like, you're not going to talk about it. This is a big investigation, all this nonsense. Long story short, I ended up taking a 10-day hit for it. And what's crazy is that there's people who wouldn't even hit the street yet. And here I am, part of this unit going through this one. And I always had that chip on my shoulder. Guys that are involved with that moved on, and it's just part of the job. And, after that experience, my career was great. I worked every shift. I got put on a parks and waterfront. I got to ride a bicycle, and people say the funniest shit to you. Like I'll just bring up this one thing. I'm riding my bike, and I'm patrolling, and just this old timer just looks at me and goes, "They give you a sled for that in the winter?" And a lot of time, and you just bite your tongue, and then as I roll off, I'm like, "Yeah." And know who we pick up? Yeah. Who are you?
The worst police injury I ever heard was by a bicycle cop.
Yeah.
So he was driving down and somebody pulled out in front of him and he hit the car. Of course, he hits his nuts on the gooseneck, but
man.
that wasn't even a big thing.
I went flying.
So he's
Right
going.
into- yeah.
So he's going home, and he starts sweating, and he's just he's not feeling good. He's sweating. So he gets home, finally makes it home, and he's stone white. His wife calls the ambulance. They rush him to the hospital. His testicle, it's called torsion. Testicular
please.
torsion. He was within you have 4 hours after the event.
Emergency surgery.
Otherwise, you're losing your nut. And he had testicular torsion. He was within moments of losing his testicle. Now he's got 5 kids, so successful surgery.
All
All right.
That's the worst injury I think I've ever heard of any cop. It was awful sounding.
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate, other than, chasing guys. I mean, I pulled my hamstring, and I mean, I really didn't get severely injured, on the job. Had a good stretch, of probably about 4 or 5 years, whatever it was. The birth of my first daughter, she's 5 years old, and I was just blessed. I was able to take some family leave, spend some time with my wife, and she has a full-time job, and she's my new chief now.
So let's bring us to the moment where it starts getting really bad.
Well, I mean, I would say it was a decline. My biggest mistake was, or misstep or misjudgment was, so we have outside employment as police. You get hired by companies to, keep safety on the street. Utility company in Hoboken, you were able to agree to a 4 or 8 hour job. You literally signed a contract and you performed outside employment. It's overtime. Now, Jersey City's outside employment got shut down for serious,
serious violations. Let's put it that way.
and we were always aware of it. And, it was something that we were aware of. And so anyway, my kid was, a baby at the time. And, I'm going to make some bullshit excuses, but, I was tired. I remember, I'll tell you, I was on days and I had all these details. I'll never forget getting put to midnights. And I remember seeing the chief. I'm like, look, I'm really looking forward to, working with these new guys, getting to know them. And, and I did. It's great. It's like first time in my career, it's like, oh, here's a new guy. And, let's show you around. let's do some work. But anyway, I'm working midnights, got a kid at home. My daughter spent 9 days in the NIC unit with a heart condition. It was very difficult and traumatic. And so anyway, I go back to work. Everything's great. My daughter didn't need surgery. She just has to see a cardiologist once a year. She's healthy, happy, and I'm very blessed. So I'm on midnights, got the kid at home. I agreed to this 8 hour job. And then, like I mentioned before, you can either do a 4 or 8 hour job. And go to the job, work the night before. Guy's like, all right, we need to shut the street down. We got to do some work. No problem. It's done early. And and this was wrong of me. Hey, I agreed to an 8 hour job. I'm good. You want to send me home early? All right, I'll go home. Fuck it. And unfortunately for me, that is wrong. I should have said, hey, pal, I'm getting out of here. Give me my 4 hours and I'll split. And I mean, they did